Breakwater. The breakwater was an imposing jumble of giant stone slabs lined up in the water. Brigg had once told her that wizards had put them there a long time ago, but she didn't know if that was true. There were houses and other buildings right up to the edge of the breakwater, but when she clambered up on top of the stones, she could see the shore on the other side was just a bare rocky beach with waves crashing in and draining out. Kat had already found one stick on the way, a nice strip of broken plank. She just needed to find a second stick. There would probably be lots of driftwood wedged in between the cracks and crevices of the breakwater. She began to walk along the breakwater. The tops of many of the stones were flat, even if they were irregular. Sometimes she had to jump over gaps between them. She watched for slippery patches, but the top of the breakwater was pretty dry. Waves would crash against the seaside, but very little of the spray would reach her. On the harbor side, the water looked calm and gentle by comparison. She shaded her eyes and tried to spot the exact place where she had been fishing. She thought she could see it. Looking down the length of the breakwater, it felt like she was walking on a bridge. She couldn't see the crabs from this angle, but she could see the black spire of the lighthouse at the very end of the breakwater. She could walk all the way to it if she really wanted. The lighthouse keepers wouldn't walk this way to get there. They had a little dinghy moored next to its base. Kat came to a gap that was a little bigger than the others. Peering down into the irregular space, she could see some water sloshing below. And there was exactly what she was looking for. A clot of kelp-tangled driftwood was stuck in the crack. The sea had pushed it in, but was not able to suck it back out. She could get a piece of that wood for her second spear. Kat inspected the rocks. The crack was sloped, and there were plenty of jagged protrusions and small cracks that she could use as hand and footholds. Kat left her plank on the rock and carefully scampered down the crevice. The narrow space was shaded by the rock above. At the bottom, Kat found purchase just above the high water line, and waited for the ebb and flow of the waves to push the driftwood closer to her outstretched hand. Suddenly, Kat noticed a perfect stick, even closer, just under the surface of the water. It was as hefty as the handle of an axe, straight, and except for a few thorny protrusions, smooth. It would make an ideal spear. As she reached for it, it moved back, and then shot forward, pressing against the rock. A second one just like it darted out of nowhere, and then a third. Kat was so startled by the sudden movement that she flinched her hand back. But doing this upset her balance, and both of her feet slipped at once, plunging her legs past the knees into the cold water. The spines on the stick scratched her ankle under the water, as Kat gasped, both at the cold and at the realization of what was down there. She clawed her way back up the rock, which felt hopelessly slippery now. She flopped dripping onto the sunlight on the dry top of the stone and rolled over, gasping with delayed surprise. Instantly, there was a claw bigger than her head snapping shut directly in front of her face. Kat wriggled backwards as the shovel crab skittered up out of the crack. Its huge, spiny body was lofted over a thicket of jointed, stilt-like legs. Beady black eyes glistened at her from behind the big, snapping, hook-shaped claw. Kat felt her plank underneath her. She seized it and brought it up, brandishing it between herself and the menacing claw. The claw crunched decisively into the end of the plank, and Kat felt herself being pulled towards the clicking mandibles of the crab's mouth. The plank splintered under the crushing force of the claw, and Kat danced backwards a few steps before turning and running a few dozen more. She looked back to see if it was pursuing her, but it had vanished. All she could see was the rocks and the sea and the distant lighthouse, and the even more distant storm clouds. She could still hear the angry clicking of the crab's jaws from somewhere down between the rocks. Cat took a few deep breaths and tried to calm her racing heart. That had been a learning experience. Cat decided that the lesson she had learned was that sticks were not adequate for this task. She needed some real metal spears. Her composure regained, Cat headed back towards the shore. She knew exactly where she could get some, too.